Senate Democrats are weighing in this morning on President Biden's poor polling numbers, and they're telling CNN they are concerned. A new NBC News poll shows the president's approval rating at just 41%. And potentially a more alarming sign, a Washington Post ABC News poll shows Biden 10 points behind former President Trump among registered voters in a head-to-head national matchup. But the Washington Post is acknowledging this poll may be an outlier. The NBC poll found Biden and Trump tied, each getting support from 46% of registered voters nationally. CNN's Jeff Zeleny joining us now to discuss. Concern is a word. I feel like that word might be a little more extreme, if you will, looking at these numbers.
Good morning, Sarah. There's usually an adjective in front of concerned when you talk to Democrats about how they are feeling about the White House and the state of Joe Biden's reelection effort. But of course, all of this must be put into context. We are more than a year before the general election next year. That's why all of these polls certainly offer us a sense of where things are. But as you said, that ABC News Washington Post poll is an outlier. All of the other recent and national polls show that this is essentially a dead heat between President Biden and former President Donald Trump, should they actually face off next year in a rematch. But one thing is very clear. The specifics of these polls are not as important as the underlying dynamics here, and that is that there are challenges for the White House, that they have not overcome concerns about the economy. They have not overcome concerns about immigration, inflation, on and on. So that is, of course, the backdrop for all of this. Now, this is a big week in presidential politics. One, President Biden is going to Detroit tomorrow to appear with striking workers. Former President Donald Trump is going on Wednesday to appear in Michigan. Of course, Michigan at the heart of the blue-collar workers, at the heart of the blue wall, if you will, the states that Trump won in 2016 and Biden won 4 years later. Of course, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, so important. There's also a Republican presidential debate on Wednesday in California that former President Donald Trump is skipping, but his rivals certainly are there. When you look at a couple other numbers in these weekend polls, Sarah, this is very interesting. When you ask Republicans if they are satisfied with the choices that they have, of course, they have a deep bench, so many candidates. Look at this number. 86% of Republicans say they are satisfied with their choices. Of course, some prefer the former president, others prefer other candidates. But when you look at Democrats, are they satisfied? Would they like to see someone challenge Joe Biden? Take a look at these numbers here. 59% of Democrats say they would like to see a challenge. Of course, the question remains, who would that be? There's no one stepping forward. There's no consensus. And the reality is that is very unlikely to happen. So on this Monday morning, that is where things stand. But certainly for the next year plus, a very tight race in this deeply divided country, Sarah.
Yeah, it's a snapshot of where we are right now, but it does tell you how people are feeling. Thank you so much, Jeff Zeleny. Appreciate you. John?
All right, with us now is former Obama campaign manager Jim Messina. He is the CEO of the Messina Group, and Alice Stewart, Republican strategist and CNN political commentator. Jim, you have in recent weeks accused members of your own party of being bedwetters, or in your words, effing bedwetters. To what extent do new polls like this fill the bladders of some Democrats before they go to bed?
Oh, I'm sure it'll lead everyone to want a bigger glass of Chardonnay tonight. But, Jeff's exactly right. This race is going to be really tight. American presidential elections are very tight. And in the battleground states that matter, the blue wall, this race will be very tight. But a little history matters as well here. Joe Biden's numbers are almost exactly what Barack Obama's numbers were in 2011 when people were counting out President Obama. We had the same challenges with messaging on the economy. That takes some time. And polls, I've been very critical of polls because as Jeff says, we're 410 days out here. They're just not predictive. What is actually predictive is these 30 special elections that we've had in this country in 2023, where Democrats have performed 11% better than they did in the last two presidential elections, largely because of the abortion issue and some other issues. But, the polls don't show that. And so polls are nice. Everyone gets all excited about them. What actually matters are real numbers and a real contrast between the Democrats and Republicans. And that's what you're going to see on Wednesday night in the Republican debate.
Alice, there's no debate that President Biden's poll numbers are tepid at best. To what extent are Republicans giving him a gift by threatening to shut down the government in 5 days. They're almost guaranteeing there will be a government shutdown in 5 days. And the leading Republican presidential contender, Donald Trump, is calling on them to shut everything down.
Well, to that regard, they're giving a gift on a silver platter with a big red bow on it, because that's going to put all the emphasis on Republicans' inability to get things done in Washington, as opposed to current Biden administration and how people feel about the economy. Look, to Jim's benefit, he had the good fortune of working for Barack Obama at this time, and were able to work on his favorability numbers as leading up into the election. Here's the reason I believe fully why Democrats are engaged in such bedwetting is because President Biden is underwater on these approval numbers. And look, we're seeing this with regard to how he handled the economy, immigration, foreign policy, and the numbers are in double digit, and that is not an outlier. Those polls are consistent with regard to his unfavorabilities across the line, and that is going to be a very difficult hill to climb as he moves closer into the general election. And another thing, in terms of who is going to stand up and challenge him, Politico reported this morning that Minnesota Congressman Dean Phillips says, I'm considering it. He says, if Democrats are going to be the so-called adults in the room, we need to start looking at a better electoral strategy. And so we do have some that are seriously concerned, and potentially others getting in the race.
Jim, you brought up the Republican debate, which is 2 nights away. Now, it's not usually your business to give Republicans advice, but if you're one of those candidates who will be on that stage, and Donald Trump will not be one of them, do you choose this time to train your focus on Donald Trump, or does Ron DeSantis have to care about Nikki Haley or Vivek Ramaswamy?
It's a great question. And look, right now, this Tier B bench of elected officials seems to be running for vice president. No one's had the guts to take on Donald Trump directly here. And to beat the king, you have to actually go after the king. And so if I was advising one of those campaigns, and thank God I'm not, but if I was, I would say, look, at some point, if you want to be the Republican nominee for president, you have to contrast yourself to Donald Trump. He leads by huge numbers, historic numbers in that primary. Or I would look at my candidate and say, okay, what you're really running for is vice president. If you're doing that, let's not make Donald Trump mad. And I think that's pretty much a strategy that most of these folks have.
Alice, what do you see happening on Wednesday night?
Look, I think the first debate, as often is the case, is more of an introductory opportunity to introduce yourself to a national stage. I've talked to all of the candidates that are going to be on the stage, and the gloves will be off on Wednesday night. They are going to go directly at Donald Trump. DeSantis says he's frustrated the other challengers haven't gone after Trump as much as they should and sort of given him a pass. Nikki Haley has gone after Trump with regard to how he handled the economy and his current positions on abortion. And all of the candidates are going to show a much stronger contrast between themselves and the other candidates. And specifically Mike Pence, he saw the opportunity in the last debate to show a contrast with Vivek. He certainly will do that. And Tim Scott as well, going to be very forceful in showing where they stand, not just against the other candidates on the stage, they're going to go directly at Donald Trump.
You really think they are? Because they really didn't the last time. And now there's this 4-way tie. The New Hampshire polling is really interesting. You have a 4-way tie for second with everyone around 10%, Alice.
Yeah, that's going to be the difficult dance that they will make is going after Donald Trump without alienating his base. And they fully understand that. But they also realize what they've been doing is these soft punches or pokes at Trump isn't working. Trump's 40 points ahead of the field. And they realize you have to get Donald Trump out of the way in order to get to Joe Biden or whoever the Democratic nominee will be. And they realize this is a very important opportunity to do so on Wednesday night. And it might be in their best interest that Donald Trump won't be there. He'll be on the picket line instead of on the debate stage. And they're going to definitely take this as a more forceful opportunity to make their case against the candidates, and specifically Donald Trump.
I got 10 seconds left. Jim Messina, the shutdown, if it does happen on Saturday, what should the White House do?
Do their day job, point out why we have a shutdown, the historic problem in the Republican caucus. And to her point earlier, this is exactly what you need to say. You need to say, hey,